To find the fuel consumption of a vehicle, we divide the distance travelled by the amount of fuel used. Fuel consumption is a compound measure. If the distance is given in miles and the amount of fuel used is given in gallons, then the units for the fuel consumption are miles per gallon. We can use a formula triangle to help us calculate the fuel consumption, distance or amount of fuel. If we want to calculate the distance, we cover up the d, which gives us the calculation fuel consumption multiplied by the amount of fuel. If we want to calculate the fuel consumption, we cover up the c, which gives us the calculation distance divided by amount of fuel. If we want to calculate the amount of fuel, we cover up the f, which gives us a calculation of distance divided by fuel consumption. If one of the quantities given is the compound measured fuel consumption, we need to make sure that the units in the compound measure match up with the units in the other given quantity. For example, if we want to find the distance, and the fuel consumption has been given as miles per litre, then the amount of fuel needs to be in litres. The units for the calculation distance volume would be miles. In this example, a car travels 120 miles and uses 3 gallons of fuel. What is the fuel consumption in miles per gallon? Using the formula triangle, we cover up the fuel consumption, so the calculation we do is distance divided by the amount of fuel. Since the compound measure of fuel consumption is being calculated, we don't need to check the units of the two given quantities, and we can put the numbers straight into the formula. So the fuel consumption equals the distance of 120 divided by the amount of fuel of 3, which equals 40. Since the distance is in miles and the amount of fuel is in gallons, then the units for the fuel consumptions are miles per gallon. So the final answer is 40 miles per gallon. In the second example, the fuel consumption of a car is 10 kilometres per litre, and the car travels 100 kilometres. And we need to find out how much fuel has been used. So using the formula triangle, we cover up the amount of fuel, and that gives us the calculation distance divided by fuel consumption. Since the compound measure of fuel consumption is one of the quantities given, we need to make sure that in units of kilometres per litre match up with the units for distance. Since this is in kilometres, and yes, they match up, so no conversion of units is required, and we put the number into the formula. So the fuel used equals the distance of 100 divided by the fuel consumption of 10, which equals 10. Since the units of the fuel consumption is kilometres per litre, then the units of the calculated fuel used is litres. So the final answer is 10 litres.